From a metrics point of view then, what are you tracking now under the sort of demand gen model versus kind of under the lead gen model that you had before?
Yeah, so under a sort of a lead gen model, your main metric is obviously the MQLs, or the number of leads you collect, which is great for giving you something to measure, but it's not necessarily actually telling you anything great about your marketing. It's sort of like it's almost like becomes like a crutch, right? You feel like, well, I've generated this many leads, I must be successful. This is 2,000 leads, great, got that many. But obviously, if those leads don't convert later to revenue, then it's kind of like a meaningless metric. What you've actually just measured is whether you can get someone to complete a form. So now, when you've got a demand gen system in place and you're just trying to drive people to your website to complete your demo form, there you've kind of like it becomes a lot more complicated to try and work out whether to see how well your marketing is doing. You could track a million different metrics. In fact, you should try and track all of them. But then it's like what actually tells you whether you're doing a good job. And I actually think I thought about this a lot recently. And just even speaking with people at Refine Labs as well, I don't think anyone's actually got this figured out. And I don't think anyone ever will. There's never going to be one metric to track. There's never going to be one metric for each business. It's or like for every business, it's going to be different. It depends on what channels you're using. It depends how active you are, what you're doing essentially. But there are lots of things I think you can consider and to give you insights that everyone could implement. And then you've got to figure out what's like sort of the best way. So I think now, so what we track at the moment is we'll look at all of those sort of like typical soft vanity metrics, like measure engagement. So we'll be looking like at click-through rates, video views of ads, engagement rate. So that includes like whether like people comment, like, or any of your posts and things like that. We'll look at like the bounce rate on the pages that they're pushed to, the time spent on page, whether they click through somewhere else. You can, we haven't actually done this yet, but you can get scroll depth then as well, as another way of looking at, as something else that you can look at to see, because some people, if they just come on the page and done nothing, then, that can be a false metric as well. Like all of these things actually on their own can give you a false picture. We track first and last touch UTM. So that's just when someone comes to the website and if they complete a form of anything, like maybe for the newsletter or to attend a webinar or something, we'll track the UTMs that brought them there then. And then if they come back later and complete the demo form, we'll be able to see that, where they came from that time around. So we got their first and last touch on the campaign there. We also have Salesforce set up with first and last touch reporting on the campaign level, which normally just will be able to show us like, whether they've maybe been first touch SDR outbound, last touch inbound demo form. So that's more on like a broader campaign level. We also have like on the thank you page, like how did you find out about us? So you can compare that against both of those attributions that like tech has given us to how they may have found out about us. And people then might mention like, podcast or something like that.
And that's a free form field, is it? That's something actually that they can input rather than the sort of typical tick box that you would tick and the other one might say other.
Yeah. And I've actually literally today just been doing analysis on ours. And people are very detailed sometimes they're not. It's a mixed bag, but you can get some really good qualitative information there. And like we've just been doing stuff on TikTok, very minor amounts, just sort of playing around with it, putting mainly following trends at the moment, which we want to move away from and maybe do some more value stuff. But in there, I saw one today saying that they first heard about us on TikTok. So I was like,
it worked.
Well, there you go. Yeah. But it's also important to include these things all in conjunction. Like, I think when I heard about that, I was like, well, why use any attribution if you can just get people to tell you themselves? But, people are unreliable. They'll tell you what is most memorable or what they've heard, but
Mm.
they won't tell you. They might forget how they actually got there. Get a lot of people just say internet or research, which I just normally rank back down as Google search,
Yeah.
because that is probably what people are doing in those things.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to remember, like, about how people heard about you, but then how they found you, and that's what the advert attribution will show you, right? So they might have heard about you on a webinar, but they, at the end of the day, they found you through Google, and what you're doing to capture them there. So once you get all these pictures together, I suppose you can see like on the ad platforms what are your most engaging ads, what people are responding to, and then you can also start to see that as people come in inbound, like how they've actually how they've reached you. We often, it reflects exactly with the activity you're doing, so that can be a self-fulfilling prophecy in itself. Like the majority of it, and ours mentions LinkedIn and Google, spend a lot of money there. But actually, you're looking for those smaller bits, right? Or word of mouth. But you're looking for those smaller bits where you can be like, that's something new. We should try. We can invest here, see if we can grow that bit. So, yeah, it's really complicated. I think there's so many different ways you can do it, and you have to sort of like figure out, based on the channels that you're doing, what basically demonstrates to you that your audience is engaged with you, and then find out somehow, and you can find this out in discovery calls as well, just how they heard about you, and then how you can sort of like double down on those areas.
And from an engagement perspective, then, particularly on social, then, is that more of a manual thing, or are you using technology to sort of help you do that?
Yeah, so all of the social platforms actually will give you their version of an engagement rate, which I think is, I need to actually look at, again, they've got like a little formula for it. So it'll give you a number, which like is based on the number of likes, comments, all this sort of stuff. So you can see the level of engagement. You can then compare that against the number of impressions it's got to see, how, like, what that engagement rate really means. Yeah. You can even, I think you can go really in depth with these things actually if you want, and you can start to sort of take the metrics the platforms will give you and start to make up your own, logarithmic scales of what's like you think's working or not. Which is something I think we want to move towards. Like, if we can try and find a way to really like figure out what's good and what works. And I think, yeah, people who are working on demand gen are trying to think about these things at the moment, trying to like get to a point where they can have like some core metrics that really tell them something. But at the moment, yeah, it's a lot of piecing together.
And have you totally done away with the MQL then? Have you still got the MQL?
Yeah, so we're still looking at the number of leads, but it's not, obviously, like, you can't, like, if someone submits like a demo request, that's an MQL, right? That's the lead. But instead of like optimizing for that level, we're optimizing further down. So you can we're really looking at SQOs, like sales qualified opportunities. We're looking at that level, like what a predictor of close one. And we try, and therefore do the activities we take, we try and like, we're trying to affect the number of SQOs rather than the number of leads. Because at the end of the day, if you optimize for the MQL, you'll just end up inflating that number by accident, by probably just reducing the quality of what you're trying to bring in.
You're almost treating the MQL as more like a vanity metric, but a signal, I guess, in a way, and really actually focusing on that, like you said, that SQL.
Yeah, exactly. And in the same way that we're looking at engagement rate and how people found out about us, the MQL itself all fits into that picture as well. So I'm still if I got 200 MQLs one month and the next month I got 80, I'm still going to be concerned, because that is undoubtedly going to affect the number of SQOs I've got, unless somehow I've remarkably improved quality. But obviously that you'd hope that, what you knew, like, you'd hope that you'd know that was going to happen if that was the case.
Yeah, fine.